Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, home of all things stock, investment, and personal finance related. Now for today's video, I'm going to be providing an update on a company that we've talked about on the channel before. They operate in the psychedelic space, and since our initial video, we've seen a nice little upward movement in the company's share price. So it's up about 20% since our initial coverage on this stock. The company name is Delic Holdings, and they've also come out with earnings and a number of big news announcements in the last couple of weeks that we're going to cover in this video. Now before we get into it, you guys, please take a second to smash the like button. It really helps get this content to other people like yourself who may find value, especially for these smaller cap type of companies. If you're not already subscribed to the channel itself, McNallie Money, feel free to do so. And let me know in the comment section below if you're currently holding shares of Delic, what you think about their earnings and their future growth prospects moving forward. Without further ado, let's get into today's video. Okay guys, so that's right. Today we're going to be providing an update on Delic Holdings Incorporated. Ticker symbol on this guy is DELC on the Canadian Securities Exchange. Now Delic also trades on the OTC in the US under the ticker symbol DELCF, so you can trade in either Canadian or US funds. We've got a ton to talk about with these guys today. They just came out with earnings. We're getting closer and closer to their big Meet Delic event. So we'll jump right into it today here, you guys. Now in terms of video format, we're going to take a look at their business model. Delic really is a conglomerate of different business units, all related to the psychedelic space, and really educating people and bringing the benefits of different psychedelic drugs to the mainstream public. So we're going to talk about the different components of their business model. We're going to talk about some of the recent news within each one of these business units. And then to wrap things up here, we're going to jump over to Cedar. We're going to take a look at their earnings report, which just came out for Q2, and another big recent development at Delic. Now, before we get into all that, I did want to talk about the numbers here quickly. So you can see market cap on these guys is right around the $20 million mark. They've got about 59 million shares on a fully diluted basis. So at today's close of 32 cents Canadian, it works out to just about $18.5–19 million. So definitely on the smaller side of things. We've talked about a number of these psychedelic type of companies on the channel in the past. So MindMed on the bigger side of things, Red Light Holland, Field Trip Health. Of all the companies we've reviewed on the channel, Delic Holdings is by far the smallest. And as you guys know on this channel, I take pride in identifying companies like this very early before Main Street investors, and better yet, even Wall Street investors, really start to come on to a lot of these ticker symbols, you guys. We've had a really successful track record over the last couple of months. We've identified Rockshield Capital. We talked about Peak FinTech and Control Technologies. So I'm really hoping to keep the streak alive here, you guys. And Delic Holdings is definitely fitting the bill in the psychedelic or psychedelic wellness space. Now for full disclosure here, you guys, I have not yet pulled the trigger on Delic Holdings. This one is currently on my watch list. We have seen the share price jump a little bit since our last video. We're going to talk about that in a second here. But as always, I will keep you posted if and when I do decide to initiate a position in Delic Holdings. Now speaking of share price, you can see they were trading relatively flat for quite some time. So back in May, they were right around the 30-cent price point. Fast forward to July, they pulled back into the mid-20s, so 26 cents. That's actually exactly where our last video came out when we initiated coverage on Delic Holdings. And then you can see just recently here at the start of September, they hit a high of 35 cents. So in my last video, we talked about them being listed on the Frankfurt Exchange. I think we're really starting to see some of that increased volume, which is translating into an increased share price as more and more people are starting to find out about this company and trade shares on a day-to-day basis. So if we jump over to the YouTube channel here, you guys, you can see my initial video on Delic came out exactly a month ago. This was listed as one of my top stocks under $1. It had a 26-cent share price at that point in time. So if you were able to initiate a position, you'd be up approximately 5 cents per share, about 20% on that initial investment. Now, I personally think Delic still has a ton of room to run. 2021 is really a transformational year for this company. Q2 is when they're starting to make some revenue. They're continuing to fold in some of their merger acquisition type of activity. We're going to talk about that later in the video, but I truly feel like you're able to get in on Delic at the ground floor here if you believe in their business model and their growth prospects moving forward. Now, if you were unable to catch that initial video I did on Delic Corporation, we did a deep dive analysis on their investor presentation and business model, so I definitely recommend you take a look. But I did want to give a high-level summary of what the company is about before we get into today's presentation. So in terms of their mission statement here, you guys, Delic Corp is a marketplace for the mainstream access to psychedelic wellness. We create a diverse ecosystem of opportunities, so that's that conglomerate of different business units that I talked about, by investing in talented entrepreneurs with cutting-edge ideas. We lead with an immense amount of experience and over 25 years of working knowledge in the cannabis, finance, and psychedelic research space. Now, we talked about that in depth. The leadership team here at Delic, Delic Labs, and KIC, or the Ketamine Infusion Clinics, truly do bring a ton of history and experience to the table, and I think that's one of the big pieces that really sets this business apart. Now, with any microcap investment like this, you guys, you really are investing in the leadership team and the vision of the initial founders. And through my research in this company, again, we're going to talk about it in a bit more detail in this video, I think they really do have the right players in place to make Delic Corp and the various different business units a big success over the next couple of years. Now, in terms of this ecosystem or the conglomerate of different business units that we've mentioned in this video, it really breaks down into 3 different divisions. So there's media, which is comprised of Reality Sandwich. This is essentially a website or a digital magazine where people can go and get information about psychedelics, their impact on people's lives, and potential treatment options or alternatives. We're going to look at this in a second. They've got the Meet Delic in-person live event. This is the big one, the annual meeting that they've coined the biggest psychedelic event in the world. It takes place in Las Vegas in early November, so that's coming up here and definitely an exciting time of year for the company. And then they've got the Delic Radio, which is a psychedelic wellness podcast that's hosted by Jackie Stang, who's the CCO and co-founder of Delic. So again, as a refresher, Delic was founded by a husband and wife team, Matt and Jackie Stang, and I think that's really important. You guys know that I love founder-led businesses, and that's exactly what we have here with Delic in the psychedelic space. Now, the second business unit or division here is really focused on the health. These are the brick and mortar clinics here, you guys. Now, they do have aggressive plans to build out their number of clinics over the next 12-month period. This is a big area of opportunity, I think, for a lot of the companies involved in this space that we've talked about on the channel. So as of right now, they've got the KIC or Ketamine Infusion Centers. They just purchased this business. We're going to talk about the closing details later in the video here, but there's 2 clinics already up and running in the US that administer IV ketamine infusions, and they've actually already administered over 4,000 treatments to date in their history. Now, the final piece here, you guys, is Delic Labs. This is really focused on the research, development, and the science division within the psychedelic industry, formerly known as CBDV, or Complex Biotech Diversity Venture. This business unit is really focused on the processing, extraction, and analytical testing of these cutting-edge treatments, therapies, and compounds that are then used in other areas of the business. So really diversified revenue model here, you guys. Again, they're just getting up and running. They're starting to see some traction in Q2. They're starting to bring in some meaningful revenue, which we're going to talk about towards the end of the video here. But this really is one of the ways that this company, Delic, has differentiated themselves from some of the others in this space, such as Red Light Holland or Field Trip Health, because they've got a couple different angles and they're looking at various different points within the psychedelic ecosystem and really trying to take care of their patients from end to end, whether that's education, coming up with new research, or actually administering the dosage or treatment themselves. So in our last video, we gave a very high-level summary of the different components within the media division. So I wanted to spend a little bit more time on each of these individual 3 components. So first up is Reality Sandwich here, you guys. This is their digital magazine or website where people can really go to get information on various different psychedelic concepts, treatment, and culture. So a very well-rounded store of information, whether you're very new to the psychedelic space or very tenured. there's definitely something for everyone. There's over 5,000 pieces of free content. They had over 460,000 website visits in 2020, so a ton of traction. And this is really looked at as one of the most trusted and reliable places to find information about psychedelics in the entire world at this point in time. Now, they've also got a super strong following on social media with over 54,000 followers across their platforms and nearly 200,000 users that they reach on a monthly basis. So if we jump over to the Reality Sandwich website, you can see this is their landing page. Reality Sandwich is a free public education platform, again with over 5,000 pieces of free content, serving up a full spread of psychedelic goodness. Here you'll find a plethora of research, news, and culture to enhance your knowledge on this fascinating subject. So they've got all different topics here, you guys, ranging from consciousness to arts, sexuality, science. They've got guides and how-tos on different substances and microdosing. And they've also got an online store or e-commerce shop where you can go in and actually purchase a variety of different products that are related to the psychedelic space. Now, Meet Delic is next up. This is their big annual in-person event that takes place in Vegas each and every November. They've got over 2,000 live attendees. A 2-day pass for this, so a Saturday-Sunday pass, is about $170 for general admission. So it's a great way to generate revenue for the company and really interact in a meaningful way with their consumers and people involved in this industry. Now, they've had a bunch of news releases since our last video, so over the last month, in relation to guest speakers and attendees to this Meet Delic event. So we're going to look at that in a second here. And again, I think this is really one of the ways that Delic has done a great job in separating their company from others in this space, because this is really a premier or world-class event that we're not seeing with a lot of other operators in the psychedelic wellness realm or industry. So this is the Meet Delic website. You can see an invitation to join the leading minds at the year's biggest psychedelic event in the world. They've got a number of keynote speakers on a variety of different topics. They've got guest panels that discuss a variety of topics ranging from ketamine to microdosing to why psychedelics are important in today's medicine. And you can see this is all designed by Jackie Stang. So again, the co-founder of Delic and the host of Delic Radio. And she says, I designed Meet Delic to be diverse, thought-provoking, and entertaining, because the best kind of learning happens when you're having fun. So they're really intending to bring all the different groups or minds within this space to one central location where they can interact, be creative, and discuss all things related to psychedelic well-being. Now, in terms of the recent news that's come out in regards to the Meet Delic event, so you can see September 1st, they announced some best-selling authors that are going to be present at the Meet Delic event. August 24th, an award-winning investigative reporter who specializes in fentanyl was also added to the speaking agenda. August 17th, the host of Psychedelic Leadership Podcast is going to appear at the Meet Delic event. August 12th, transformation coach and creator/host of the thought-provoking podcast, The Lifestylist, is also going to speak at the Meet Delic event. And then finally, July 29th, Aubrey Marcus, who's a New York Times best-selling author and co-founder CEO of Onnit, has signed up to speak at the event as well. So they're continuing to add highly renowned and well-known individuals within this space to their roster, and that's exactly what makes this Meet Delic event so impressive and so important within this industry, is the variety and depth of knowledge that are going to be present at this event. Now, the final piece of Delic's media division is really this Delic Radio Psychedelic Wellness Podcast. Now, this is the one that's hosted by Jackie Stang. I've actually listened to a couple of these since our last review, and it really is quite refreshing, both the topics that they talk about and the way they present their information related to psychedelic news, science, and culture. So you can see there's quite a variety of topics that they discuss on this podcast. They've put out a total of 46 episodes to date. They've got a 4.5 out of 5-star rating on the Apple Podcast Store. And I think this is, again, a really cool and creative way to interact with potential consumers in this space. So I would highly recommend, if you are looking to invest in Delic, take a listen to a couple of these podcasts, see what they're about, because they definitely have a unique twist or flair or feel to them. Now, after the media component, we have health, and this is really focused around the KIC or ketamine infusion centers. So this was actually a freestanding or separate business that was acquired by Delic back in June, and as mentioned, they've already administered over 4,000 treatments exclusively focused on what they call IV ketamine infusion. Now, the interesting thing here is they're already generating revenue. They're based in the US, and they've put up over $1.5 million in top-line revenue over the past 3 years. Now, if we jump over to Cedar filing, at the start of the video here, I said there was 2 articles that I wanted to talk about. The first one here is in relation to Kick. It actually came out on September 8th, and it's called a Business Acquisition Report. So if we click on this guy here, you can see it discusses the closing of the acquisition of Ketamine Infusion Centers LLC by Delic Holdings. And there's some really good information in here that we didn't talk about in our last video that I wanted to spend a couple of minutes on. So if you scroll down, you can actually see the Ketamine Infusion Center's consolidated financial statement for 2020. This is all expressed in US dollars, and you can actually get a breakdown of their revenue over the last couple of fiscal years. Now, obviously the pandemic situation has had an impact on the number of inpatient visits or treatments, but what I thought was super interesting, and we talked about this in the last video, is the leadership team at Kick actually has what they call a milestone agreement written into this transaction where they can actually receive up to $150,000 US bonus for each new clinic opened by Kick that's cash flow positive for 3 consecutive months after opening, while achieving a minimum revenue of $175,000 US in those 3 consecutive months. So I think the leadership team here is going to be super motivated to get more and more of these clinics up and running, hence Delic's aggressive plans to build out their brick and mortar clinic locations over the next 12 months. And that's going to directly impact top line revenue for this business unit. Now, the other article on Cedar I wanted to talk about in this video is the interim financial statement, so Q2 financials. We're going to talk about those towards the end of the video, but there's a couple nuggets in there as well in relation to Kick. So within this earnings report, they actually give a breakdown of each of the different business units within Delic. So they talk about Reality Sandwich, Meet Delic, Delic Radio, and they also give an update on both Delic Labs and Kick. So you can see here they currently own 2 ketamine infusion treatment centers, both in the US, as we mentioned, one in Phoenix and the other in California. And it actually breaks down their pricing structure. And I thought this was super cool to see exactly how each one of these patients contribute or roll up to those top line revenue numbers we just saw in that last document. So treatments really range from $350 to $750 per session. And the other number that I thought was really interesting here is retention rates for ongoing treatments. So people that are actually coming back time and time again is 75%. So 3 out of every 4 people who get one of these ketamine infusions finds value and actually wants to repeat the treatment. Now, under normal business circumstances, each one of these clinics can administer about 120 treatments per month. So it's very easy to see how they can scale their revenue and grow that top line number in a meaningful way as they get up to full capacity and they bring more of these clinics online within the next couple of quarters. Now, the other thing that's interesting here is in the States, Medicare will actually contribute a portion of these treatment expenses. So that's a big driver for me as well, because it really brings the out-of-pocket expense or cost down to the end user or patient receiving the treatment. Now, the final piece here that we're going to take a look at in this video is the science division. This is really the Delic Labs component of Delic, and this is the one that was formerly named Complex Biotech Diversity Ventures. So this was actually founded by award-winning chemists. Again, this was a freestanding business that Delic purchased and folded into their overall business operations. And they've actually got approval from Health Canada to start research on both psilocybin and cannabis compounds. Now, what this really allows Delic Labs to do is create a strong portfolio of intellectual property that they can then leverage and monetize down the road. So projects which include advanced analytical services, compound database, and extraction optimization, which again they call out here are scalable revenue generating streams that they're now starting to roll out to their first initial customers. And again, you can see that in the earnings release here. Delic Labs is a licensed psilocybin and cannabis research laboratory focused on extraction, analytical testing, chemical process development, and serves as an engine for the Delic platform itself. They conduct research and develop innovative product lines and intellectual property, that's the IP that we just mentioned, including psilocybin vaporization technology, which can then be used for future distribution across the company's physical footprint or those brick and mortar locations. Now, they currently have customers up and running, which include biotech companies, alcohol, tobacco, instrument manufacturers, and cannabis producers here in Canada. So they are starting to generate some revenue, but I really feel like they're in the infancy stage, and this business unit is going to ramp up in a big way over the next couple of years. So to wrap things up here, you guys, I did want to quickly touch on the numbers. So in terms of capital structure, here you can see the 59 million shares outstanding on a fully diluted basis. So relatively small share count overall, or share float. And if we jump back to the CEDAR filing, you can see their revenue for the 6-month period ending June 30th, so Q2 of 2021. For the 3 months, they generated $150,000 in sales. Now, that's not a huge number by any means here, you guys, but it's important to recognize that this is the first quarter they've actually recognized revenue as a company. They had gross profit of $130,000, and overall this worked out to a loss per share of 3 cents. Now, the other thing I wanted to call out here, they've done a really good job over the last 3 quarters of really preserving their overall common shares outstanding and not diluting existing shareholders. They've also grown their assets substantially from about $1.6 million in March of 2021 to just under $12 million in total assets at the end of Q2. Now, in terms of a breakdown on that $150,000 of revenue, you can see Q2 2021, $149,000 compared to nil or nothing in Q2 of 2020. And the $149,000 really breaks down into 2 main components. So in the US side of things, they've got their media division, which contributed just over $30,000. In Canada here, with the Delic Labs side of things, they produced just under $120,000 under the Sciences banner, which contributes again to that $149,000. Now, one thing that's important to call out, Q2 did not recognize revenue for Kick, and as we talked about a couple slides ago, they're generating about $500,000 US each and every year. So that's going to substantially increase Delic revenue in Q3 of 2021. And I think that's really when a lot of investors are going to start to follow this company, because they're going to see that huge quarter-over-quarter revenue growth. So to wrap things up here, you guys, I think Delic is really starting to see some traction. They've got a number of different business units that are all starting to come to fruition at the same time. They've got their huge Meet Delic event this November in LA, and I think that's going to draw a lot of attention to this company from both the investment community and professionals in the psychedelic wellness space. Although we have seen the share price move nicely since our last video about a month ago, they're still trading well below the highs we've seen in March of this year when they touched kind of the 50-cent range. So I think the price we're seeing today for Delic is very compelling, especially considering that they're going to be folding in the revenue from Kick, and we're going to start to see that aggressive quarter-over-quarter revenue growth, not to mention additional M&A type of activity and the build-out of these brick-and-mortar clinics or locations over the next 12 months. So for those reasons, you guys, I'm definitely interested. This one is on the top of my watch list. As always, I'll keep you posted on if and when I do decide to pull the trigger. I'm really looking forward to seeing how the Meet Delic event goes, and I'll continue to provide updates on this channel in relation to Delic as big news and milestones continue to happen. Now, on a final note here, you guys, if you're not already subscribed to the channel itself, McNallie Money, feel free to do so. Let me know in the comment section below what you think of Delic, how you think their business model stacks up to some of the others in this space, and if you're currently holding shares. And if you're still watching the video at this point in time, hopefully you found some value, so make sure you smash the like button. It really does help get this content to other people like yourself who may find value, specifically for these small and micro cap type of companies. And with that said, you guys, thanks so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.